Good afternoon. Happy Women's Day to everybody. My name's Ruth Hayes. I'm chair of Labour Women Leading and an activist within the trade union and wider labour movement. It's a real honour to be chairing this Rising Women in the Global South Solidarity Rally today on International Women's Day 2024, hosted by Arise, a festival of left ideas. As we mark International Women's Day, socialist women all around the world are at the forefront of resistance to inequality and injustice, fighting for progressive solutions to the health, environmental and other crises that people are facing. And of course, as I'm sure some of our speakers today will focus on, standing up in solidarity with the Palestinian people and the women there who've been disproportionately affected. Today, our theme is solidarity with women rising in the global south, with an emphasis on solidarity with Palestine, ongoing progressive rebellions against neo-colonialism and neo-liberalism in Africa, Latin America, and beyond. If you're able to, there is a link provided so that you could make a donation. The suggested donation is £20 if you could afford that, to enable Arise to continue to host these important events and support the other campaigns that are put in the chat throughout today's session. It is fantastic lineup of speakers that I'm really looking forward to hearing from myself, and I'm sure this will be an informative discussion. So first of all, I'd like to welcome Emma Sheerin, MLA, who's speaking on behalf of our sisters in Sinn Fein of Ireland today. Emma, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much, Ruth, for that introduction. So yes, I'm a Sinn Féin activist in the north of Ireland and I'm an elected representative. So I sit as an MLA in our recently restored Stormont institutions. For anybody that doesn't know, Sinn Féin is a party of the left. We are a Republican movement. We cover the entire country of Ireland, and I suppose our movement that were born out of resistance to British imperialism. Obviously, Ireland as a whole was colonised, and throughout previous generations, we had different uprisings against that and different elements who were involved in trying to end the British occupation of Ireland. And in the early 1920s, we had the partition of Ireland. So I am a representative in the 6 counties, which is still technically a part of the United Kingdom. And the raison d'etre of Sinn Féin is to end that and to create a new socialist republic in which we can all prosper and thrive. And I suppose at the minute, we are in a fairly positive place. Our party is led by 2 women. Mary McDonald is the Sinn Féin Uachtaráin, and Las Uachtaráin is Michelle O'Neill, who was recently appointed the First Minister in the North after our most recent Assembly elections in May 2022, in which we became the biggest party for the first time ever. And I suppose the significance of that is huge, particularly for people living in the North who were alive throughout the conflict and remember the early days of the Northern State. When it was established, it was very clearly set up to be a Protestant parliament for Protestant people. And there was an inbuilt majority there, and the state was gerrymandered to ensure that there would always be unionist dominance and that the views of those who wished to remain within the United Kingdom would always be on top. So in that light, the fact that a Republican woman is now the First Minister is of huge significance, and people feel very emboldened by that and very proud of that. And Michelle has started her work as First Minister to say that she wants to work for everybody and be a representative for all within the community. And I think has already, just in the short time that she's been First Minister, we're only in place just over a month. And she's already demonstrated that very clearly through everything that she's been involved in and trying to build relationships with people from all backgrounds and all views. We obviously, when the country was partitioned, we had 2 states that were set up, both very conservative and regressive. And on both sides of the border, we seen the impact of that disproportionately impact women, to very patriarchal societies in which women were always seen as lesser, and that was always the case. And it was actually the system was written into the constitution. We have referenda actually taking place today on the southern side of the border in the 26 counties, where we've had over 100 years now of government led by Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, both of whom are quite conservative in terms of their social policies. So we actually have referenda today on changing some of the wording in the constitution around the role of a woman in the home. And it's yet to be seen how that will play out. And the proposed changes from the government are not ideal, but I suppose it's seen as a step in the right direction in terms of changing the structures of the society and moving away from the patriarchal framework that has always been the case. Ireland, in terms of the 26 county state, had, it only legalised same-sex marriage in 2015. We had the repeal of the Eighth Amendment, which was a complete ban on any sort of reproductive access. That only came into force in 2018, and we still have problems with that. In the North, obviously, the dominance of unionism and political unionists who are very conservative in terms of, again, their social views means that we had to rely on the Westminster government to bring in changes to our reproductive rights legislation, and that had been voted against in the Assembly by the Unionist majority. So all of these things mean that we're, in terms of our goals, we're trying to unite the country, but we're also trying to break down the different barriers to women as we do that, and the two sort of go hand in hand. Sinn Féin as a movement have long had solidarity with left groups across the world. Very, very proud of our long-standing sort of collaboration with the Palestinian people in particular. And today, I think it's right that we pay sort of note to the fact that the people of Gaza are currently experiencing a genocide, and what is happening there is horrific, and we're all seeing it being live streamed. And the fact that successive Western governments have aided and implemented the Israeli regime, which has oppressed Palestinian people and is now outwardly murdering them, is completely wrong. And as an Irish person, as an Irish woman from the hills, whose ancestors had two options: you either struggled or you left. It hurts me, I suppose, that some of the children's children of the people who left Ireland during the enforced famine in our country, which was not a famine, it was a genocide. Some of their ancestors, people that left the shores of this country during the 1800s because they had to, because they had no other way of surviving, their children's children are now involved in governments in both Britain and America who are implicit in a genocide of the people of Palestine, who are in the same situation that Irish people were in 200 years ago. And I think that's shameful, and it's something that I deeply regret. So we send our solidarity to the people of Palestine, as we have done, and we want to see an immediate ceasefire. And I don't think it is lost on anybody that the impact of this particular conflict is massively, disproportionately impacting women. Obviously, latest figures are telling us 9,000 women have been killed in Gaza. Women in Palestine bleed too. They are having babies without anaesthetic. They don't know if their children are going to survive. They are experiencing all the things that we as women across the world experience in terms of periods and the menopause and all of those things, but without the dignity of hygiene products or privacy or any access to the healthcare that they need. And again, as a woman who comes from a movement that was based in struggle, I think of previous generations of Irish Republican women who were in Armagh jail and went through things like the blanket protest, facing those same sorts of conditions in resistance to occupation. And that fact is not lost on me. So I send my solidarity to everybody across the world who's united in the left movement. And I thank you very much for inviting me today. And it's been a privilege to represent Sinn Féin on this panel. Gormagat.
Thank you so much, Emma. That's much appreciated, and you've covered a huge amount of ground within your allotted time. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. We'll be moving now to hear from Aimee Shalan, Director of MACAN, and a leading campaigner in the Palestinian community in Britain. So Aimee, we stand with you and all Palestinian women at this awful time, great significance. So Aimee, we look forward to hearing your contribution. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm director of McCann. We are a Palestinian-led transformative education organization that works to strengthen voices for Palestinian liberation. And we work to help transform the existing narrative on Palestine to one that upholds freedom, justice, and dignity. And we do that by delivering educational workshops and trainings on Palestine and creating useful resources and tools for Palestine advocates, as well as connecting people and organizations active on the issue to one another. And this morning, McCann published an Instagram post to mark International Women's Day as a reminder that as we advocate against discrimination and honor women's achievements, it is also time to stand in solidarity with the countless women and girls in Gaza who are striving to survive and to resist the escalating genocide against them. In the post, we paid tribute to Palestinian women facing immense physical and mental distress amidst constant bombardment, death, disablement, forced displacement, C-section deliveries without anesthetic, and a lack of basic menstrual health supplies, as we've just been hearing. We paid tribute to women like the filmmaker and journalist Bisan Oda, who has put her life on the line for the past 5 months to give us a glimpse of the atrocities being committed by Israel and the day-to-day struggles endured by Palestinians. We talked about Amira al-Asuli, a gynecologist and doctor who risked being shot at by Israeli snipers to help bring wounded people in front of a building besieged by Israeli forces to a hospital in Khan Yunis, where she was volunteering. And we spoke about Asma Mustafa, winner of the Global Teacher Award in 2020, who has been displaced twice since October the 7th, initially to a school and then to Rafah after the school she took refuge in was bombed, and who still continues against all odds to teach and run daily classes for children today. We also wrote about artist Amal Abu al-Sabah, who has been painting on the rubble in Gaza, and whose mural Gaza 2024 depicts people rising up after an attack, holding a Palestinian flag. And Sumaya Wusha, an 11-year-old girl who has started reporting on camera, aspiring to follow in the footsteps of legendary Palestinian journalist Sheerin Abu Akleh, who was herself shot and killed by an Israeli sniper in the West Bank in May 2022. These are just a few Palestinian women who, despite bearing the brunt of the horrors of Israel's war machine, have encapsulated immense strength, courage, and hope beyond the powers of words or imagination. But as soon as we published the social media piece, an account called Israel Will Always Be Forever posted a comment saying, "We advocate for all women, including Israeli women raped, murdered, and held hostage by Palestinians." As Palestinian writer, academic, and grassroots organizer Nadia Elia has highlighted, as we watch with horror Israel's escalating genocide against the Palestinian people, Palestinian feminists and our allies have also had to deal with accusations of not caring about sexual assault and rape when the victims of rape are Israeli. The accusations of widespread systematic sexual violence, which were published by the mainstream media and then repeated by politicians, are harrowing but unsubstantiated. And today, as we mark International Women's Day, it's important to acknowledge how these unsubstantiated claims of sexual violence were also used to justify what has happened since and used to dehumanize all Palestinians. We need to ask ourselves why attention isn't being given to Israeli soldiers arresting Palestinian men and stripping them naked as a form of gendered violence, why attention isn't being given to the fact that between 180 and 200 Palestinians are giving birth every day under genocidal conditions, and why that isn't being recognized as a form of gendered and reproductive violence. Considering that the genocidal assault on Gaza only accelerated since October the 7th, but has been going on for decades prior to that, we can say that gender violence against the Palestinian people has been going on for decades, and yet it has been dismissed as non-existent, despite Palestinian feminists presenting copious evidence for it. Despite bearing the brunt of the horrors of Israel's war machine, Palestinian women have encapsulated immense strength, resilience, courage, and hope. And today, women and girls in Gaza are standing in defiance against the dehumanization of Palestinians of all genders, conveying the message that Palestinians will not be defeated. In the words of 16-year-old Noor El-Naji, who writes verses and sings about Palestine, who watched her home being burned down with all of her writings in it, and who has since been displaced to Rafah with just a book in her hand, and who continues to write and sing in camp. Their victory lies in our annihilation. Our triumph is to endure, as we always do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was very powerful and a real reminder of both the individuals who have been affected and the whole communities. And I know I've been hearing from several women this week about the conditions that women are living in Palestine, and the horrific situation in terms of women giving birth and general lack of access to any services. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. I just wanted to say how great it is that you're reaching such an audience. We've got over 100 people with us now on YouTube and Facebook already, including people from Portugal, Northampton, North London, South London, East London, Sheffield, Edinburgh, Derbyshire and New York City. So a real international audience. It's great that the power of technology enables us to come together in different parts of the globe. I'm going to move on to our next speaker, who is Carole Regan of the Cuba Solidarity Campaign. Who's going to talk to us about why on International Women's Day we stand with the women of Cuba and against the illegal US blockade. Carole, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, and happy International Women's Day to everyone. I've been involved in Cuba Solidarity Campaign and Palestine Solidarity Campaign for many years, scarily probably over 40 years when I think about it, and visited both countries quite a few times, raising both campaigns as well in my union, which used to be the NUT and is now the NEU. But today I'm going to talk about Cuba's position on the horrific genocide, as people have referred to, taking place before our very eyes every day, where women and children are 70% of those killed, a horrific figure. But from the very beginning, the Cuban revolutionaries saw Palestine as part of the fight against colonialism, neo-colonialism and imperialism. On June the 18th, 1959, just 6 months after the revolution, Che Guevara and Raul Castro visited Al-Baraj refugee camp in Gaza, which was then under the control of the Egyptian government of Nasser. Che and Raul were touring countries at the forefront of the struggle against imperialism, talking to leaders and discussing how unity could be built across the continents. Che reaffirmed Cuba's support for Palestine at the UN General Assembly on the 11th of December 1964, making a critique of the role of US imperialism and extending solidarity, among others, to the Arabs of Palestine. Che attacked the role of US imperialism in blocking the rights of peoples to self-determination and for interfering in the internal and sovereign affairs of countries across the continents. The support of the Cubans has been unwavering ever since. Since October the 7th, Cuban leaders have been forthright in condemnation of Israel's genocide in Gaza. In an impassioned message recorded on October 29th, President Miguel Diaz-Canel spoke on behalf of the Cuban people and put the issue of Palestine into the wider historical context. And he said, "We do not accept certain selective indignation that seeks to ignore the seriousness of the genocide that is perpetrated today against the Palestinians, presenting the Israeli side as the victim and ignoring 75 years of attacks, occupation, abuse, and exclusion. Nothing can justify what Israel's army is doing in Gaza." Cuba is in full support of South Africa's case against Israel at the International Court of Justice earlier this month. A statement from Cuban Foreign Ministry made clear that as a signatory to the UN Convention of 1953, Cuba has the obligation to prevent and punish genocide. It expressed Cuba's conviction that South Africa's claim should be understood and heeded as an urgent call to stop the hideous international crimes of genocide against humanity and apartheid being perpetrated against the Palestinian people. The Cuban spokesman also stated, the Convention Against Genocide also punishes the accomplices and instigators, those who veto decisions and prevent the international community and the United Nations from taking action, those who oppose an immediate ceasefire and the delivery of humanitarian aid, those who, for years, have supported each and every one of the policies and practices of Israel, the occupying power, which deny the existence of the Palestinian people and their rights. This agenda, to a large extent, has advanced unabatedly in the course of time. Cuba's support for Palestine and Palestinians has been more than just words. The Latin America School of Medicine in Havana teaches students from all over the world, many, I might add, from the US, but in particular, students from the global South, many of whom are granted scholarships. Currently, the school hosts around 250 Palestinian students. In a gesture of solidarity, President Diaz-Canel invited 144 of these young Palestinians to the Palace of the Revolution for a meeting on the 17th of November. At the meeting, the president was presented with a black and white keffiyeh by the students, and I think I've seen him wearing it ever since. And he said, "We are going to take care of you. We are going to give you all our attention. We are going to accompany you in your careers because you are the future of Palestine." We Cubans learned to defend the Palestinian cause from the internationalist and humanist vision of the historic leader of our revolution, Commander-in-Chief Fidel Castro, who was always a friend of that nation that demands its right to self-determination. A week later, on November the 24th, around 100,000 people, which is a substantial number in a country the size of Cuba, marched through the capital calling for an immediate ceasefire, an end to the occupation, and justice for the Palestinians. The march was led by some of the Palestinian students, together with the president and other Cuban leaders, in stark contrast to our own leaders who are complicit in acts of genocide. They have continued to have regular demonstrations across the country showing solidarity with the Palestinians. Cuba understands the weight of imperialism's aggression. They have suffered for more than 60 years of vicious US blockade, which is currently taking a massive toll on the lives of the Cuban people, with lack of medicine and medical equipment, alongside basic needs. The Cuba Solidarity Campaign has launched a fundraising campaign for much needed basic medical aid called Cuba Vive, which is information. I think the information is in the chat. A parting gift of the Trump administration was to increase the effects of the blockade and also to place Cuba on the list of sponsors of state terrorism with the most devastating effects on the economy of the country. Biden also, in his presidential run, said that one of his promises, he would remove Cuba from the list. But since his election, he has done nothing. Cuba Solidarity Campaign has also launched a petition to get Cuba off the list, which I think is also in the chat. The Cuban Palestinians and other oppressed people around the world know that Western imperialism cannot be trusted, and it's only through mass campaigning and action that progress can be made. Attempts to stop our democratic rights to demonstrate have to be resisted with bigger shows of strength and solidarity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Carole, and really important to hear about the solidarity that's being showed and to be informed about what's happening. Our next speaker is Natalia Urban of BrasilWire. Today's rally's been supported by Labour Friends of Progressive Latin America, and it will be great to hear some positive news from that continent's major struggles now. Thank you, Natalia.
Hello, Ruth. Hello, my sisters who are here today and everybody who's watching us. Fortunately, I have great things to report about what's happening in Brazil for women. It was a very difficult task that President Lula had after Bolsonaro, who was historically, I guess, the biggest misogynist we had in power in Brazil, but thankfully things changed. In 1 year, President Lula did amazing things that will benefit, especially not just all women, but especially women from working class backgrounds, indigenous women, and Afro-Brazilian women. President Lula sanctioning the program of menstrual dignity, which will benefit millions of women all over Brazil who have access to free sanitary products through our health system. He also created the National Pact of Prevention of Feminicides, which is when women are killed by their partners or killed just for the sake of being women. He also gave priority for women, especially single moms, to have access to social housing in Brazil. He approved a law that I'm particularly very, very happy about it, of equally pay between men and women in Brazil. And also he destined over, it would be converting, I guess, £5 million to shrink business and entrepreneurship of Black women, indigenous women, traveler women, and women who had kids killed by racial violence. And not just all of that, but the Workers' Party, the party of President Lula, who is presided by a great woman called Gleisi Hoffmann, they will be marching today all over Brazil, asking for no amnesty for the ones involved in the attempted coup of 8th of January. Strengthen our democracy, with women being the line of front in the strengthening of the Brazilian democracy. And most importantly, no more war on the people of Gaza. The Brazilian government is not just Lula, but also the First Lady, Janja Lula da Silva. Also, many ministers and Gleisi Hoffmann herself have been very harsh on the Israeli government regarding the atrocities being committed in Gaza. So they will use the 8th of March such an important day to bring visibility to the solidarity of Brazil and also to show that the Brazilian people want a ceasefire in Gaza. Not of that, but I just wanted to finish saying that we have to celebrate many things. We also have to remember the fact that our first female president, Dilma Rousseff, who was a woman who just put herself in a difficult position during the dictatorship, was arrested and tortured. She was a victim of a coup. And now she rose again as the president of BRICS Bank. So I'm very happy to say that women in Brazil still have many problems, but we are getting by very well under President Lula government.
Thank you so much. It's great to share that positive news and the really practical steps that are being taken to improve women's lives. That's really great. Thank you very much indeed. We move to our final speaker for the rally now, who's Claudia Turbet-Delof from Wiphalas across the world, who'll be speaking on Bolivia. So Claudia, over to you.
Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon, sisters. Good afternoon, comrades. I want to start by saying, Hayaya Palestina, Viva, Viva Palestina. This is an international Women's Day like no other. We are together in absolute grief for what's happening to our sisters in Palestine, in Gaza, and which, as you know, is a genocide happening against the Palestinian people, where majority of those killed are women and children. I'm pretty honored to be here today with so many of you, where we're gonna shine, hopefully, light to what has been the struggles of the Bolivian women in Latin America, our Abya, and how through the victories we can also learn and feel empowered to apply them in our own struggles. And of course, join in the urgent call to fight against imperialism and colonial practices. And of course, what's happening now with our brothers and sisters in Gaza. Before I continue, I do want to extend also my admiration to every single woman in this call, in this session, in this rally, because as you probably know, and as you probably have felt it, many of us women are being trying to be silenced in our support for Palestine. Many of us are being persecuted for our political views, for our stance, for simply calling for the genocide to end. So I do want to salute you and send you my solidarity, because you're choosing to stay by your principles and the very principles that you've been attacked for at the moment. My solidarity goes to you. I also want to just give a little bit of context to what we know is a blueprint for what imperialist and colonial strategies is on trying to silence us women. So I'm gonna make sure that I don't want to miss, I'm partially blind, so I don't want to miss what I want to tell you today, what I have prepared for you all. In my case, I'm very, very proud that my native Bolivia, the plurinational state of Bolivia, has for years stood strong and in solidarity with the Palestinian people, denouncing and in fact supporting the case as well for to South Africa, and being one of the contributor countries that supported the case. Now, you might know that in Bolivia, we call it in Latin America, the Abya region. Latin America is the name that our colonizers gave us. But we continue to be the focus of capital interest of our lands and natural resources. And one of the things I also want to share with you is how we have fought back, and the Bolivian people, especially indigenous women, have fought back neoliberal governments and the wins that hopefully we can apply them today to the struggles that we have today. You may know this, that the Abya region, Latin America, is very rich in resources. In fact, we have, in Bolivia alone, we are the largest reserve, we have the largest reserve of lithium in the world. And this has meant, and continues to mean, that we are at the focus of political conflicts. We are the focus of attempts to destabilize our democratically elected governments. And this is very important to mention today. Because we have to, in the 20th and 21st century, we have had at least 83 coups that have taken place in the region, and another 23 attempts of coups. This means that we're constantly fighting back neoliberal governments and constantly fighting back the attacks on our governments with intention to freeway to our lands and to the intention to extract our natural resources. I did feel that today it's very important that we mention this because of what it means, the occupation of land, illegal occupation of lands with the Palestinian people, and how in other areas of the world, like in Latin America, we have also suffered similar occupation, how we fought it back. I hope that by sharing with you what the Bolivian women have fought back is an inspiration to you and reaffirmation that yes, it is possible to fight it back, and that it is important to continue to put the fight against imperialism at the forefront of our political agenda. All these coups that have taken place in Latin America really have been armed and funded by the United States, by European empires, and we have had thousands upon thousands of people that have been murdered, imprisoned, and disappeared. Neoliberal policies really have stripped us, especially women, of access to education, to healthcare, and collective ownership of our own land and territory. And the reason why I want to focus on this is because I personally feel that this has been the biggest achievement that we have created through the struggles and the fight that women, especially campesina women in Bolivia, have achieved and that we now all enjoy. These struggles and fight against neoliberal policies truly has led us to believe, to achieve a great changes, revolutionary changes for the country. Now, so it won't, for you, probably won't come as a surprise that we, in our country, in Bolivia, we do understand what it means to have our lands occupied, to have our resources taken, and to have our people being killed in order for profit for the empire. Just to end my participation today, I wanted to share with you that one of the major, and I hope you go and find out a bit more in your own time, is that one of the major fights that we have had as women, especially indigenous women in Bolivia, is the creation of the new political constitution for Bolivia. This political constitution has given women and the peoples of Bolivia the inclusion, coexistence of different peoples in Bolivia, everyone having an access and having being recognized for the human rights, being recognized for different cultures in our constitution. I do hope that a lot of countries or everywhere in the world, we do take seriously creating our new constitution, so then our human rights and our rights to land and our rights to healthcare is equal for all. Thank you, and happy International Women's Day.
Thank you very much indeed, Claudia. And I think huge thank you to all the sisters who've spoken and been so inspiring. Definitely, it's made me want to go away and look things up and get more involved in other campaigns. And I hope that's true for everyone watching. Thank you to Arise, to their volunteers for putting this on and making today possible. There is a link to donate in the chat if you're able to make a donation to help meet the costs of, even though online events, there's a cost to having the Zoom links and those sorts of things to make sure that future events can be put on. That would be amazing, and your practical solidarity is very much appreciated. Please do look at the action links so that the work can be amplified. It's been great to hear from sisters from so many different parts of the globe about what's happening, some really positive stuff, along with the appalling situation that there is in Palestine at the moment. Please do follow our media partner, Labour Outlook, who produce regular updates from left perspectives on a whole number of issues, and have got a tremendous track record of ensuring women's voices are heard and celebrating the achievements of women activists. And do look out for future events. There will be an educational forum on the socialist ideas of the founder of International Women's Day, Clara Zetkin, taking place in April. We've heard from all our speakers today just how important our campaigning and work for international solidarity is, and what a difference it makes. This must continue. So we must build a better world. Let's do it together. Happy International Women's Day, and thank you for coming along.